All right, welcome back to you fellas. Thanks very much indeed for the news update. Now let's turn attention to something else now. The freezing of accounts by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. For about 72 hours some days ago, the bank accounts of the Akwa Ibom state government was frozen. And the alleged culprit, the state said, was the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC.
Now, the state government has now dragged the EFCC to court, demanding 50 billion naira as damages over the recent freezing of its state accounts. 3 banks are also joined in the suit as co-defendants. The state government says that the recent freezing of its accounts by the anti-graft agency for about 72 hours was unlawful and had crippled both economic and the reputation of the state. Right, we have a lawyer and public affairs analyst, Jide Ologun, with us in the studio. Good morning, Jide.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
And happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays to you too. All right, make us understand, really. Let's start from whether the EFCC has the right. This is not even the issue of investigation yet. Yeah. Let us even assume there are cases, but does the EFCC has the right to freeze the account or freeze the account of a state government?
Yeah, the EFCC is a creation of the Act, the Act of 2004. And of course, the primary responsibility is to enforce laws concerning economic and financial crimes. And if you look at Section 6 of that Act, it gives wide discretionary power to EFCC to investigate. And if you look at sections 26 and 34, those deal with the power of seizure of properties and freezing of accounts, but not without court order. And I think that is where the real kernel is. Of course, someone already advised that in having an effective criminal justice value chain, you must have a thorough investigation, diligent prosecution, and a committed judiciary. But what we have seen lately are emotional approach, sensational approach, and people will be forced to ask questions. And one of the questions is that, why is it at this point in time, when we are having defections, that you just proceed? And the Akwa Ibom government is coming out to say that they have brought unquantifiable losses upon the state. We are talking about taxpayers' money. Even if you go to the Constitution of Nigeria, you look at Section 162, it talks about a pool of resources, the federation account, from where you share money to the state, local government, to manage the affairs of the state. So you are crippling the economy of the state. Nobody is stopping you from investigating. If you look at Section 308 of the Nigerian Constitution as amended, it talks about immunity. But there are even judicial pronouncements up to the Supreme Court level that the fact that a president or vice president, governor or a deputy governor are under immunity does not preclude them from being investigated. And under Section 4 of the Police Act, you can investigate and preserve your evidence, so that when this person is out of office, you can proceed against him. And so what we have seen lately, though we deny it, is that what should be done professionally are being done politically.
But again, the judicial officer of the state, the Attorney General, who has, as a consequence, sued the EFCC, said that, look, the Constitution does not grant any federal agency the powers to freeze the account of a state. But in your position, you made reference to sections 34 and 36, giving such powers to investigate and freeze in some instances, if I'm not mistaken. But again, the judicial officer of the state is given a different position, but which is different from your position at the moment. So sometimes it leaves the neutrals like us.
If you even look at the Section 34, it talks about someone, no reference to the state. And that is why some of us have been driving an advocacy that if we need to review our laws to match the realities of our time, why not? But we are also reluctant to reject the law. So we need to be strategic. So there is no reference to the state.
So there is a sense in which there is some form of ambiguity in the interpretation of some of these sections.
And that is what I just mentioned now. When you discover a gap, you must bridge that gap. Like, let's make reference to the case of Kogi State. You recall that in the course of the election, a candidate died at a point that threw the constitution into disarray. You see, that
because
is
there was no proper constitutional provision for that.
Yes.
Now, we are talking about...
And then remember the doctrine of necessity as well.
Exactly. We are talking about the processes of impeaching some officers. The Constitution is too cumbersome. You see, so if you are interested in sanitizing the environment, you also rejig the Constitution to make the process, faster. So these are all the issues. We must take all these things holistically. If you even look at Article 17 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, it gives you right to own properties and without anybody just clamping down on that. And the argument is that, okay, if you can come ahead to freeze the account of a state, you should also do that to the federal government. We know the various economic activities that go on in a state. You know the security situation in the country. So when you shut down the account, our governance system is heavily monetized. It causes a serious shock to the system. And again, Akwa Ibom State is looking at the reputation. One of the claims is that those who could have come to do business with them,
they had to turn
back.
Yes.
You see,
or
which
go
is
somewhere
valid.
else.
And for me, I link this with the global environment. We are no longer just a nation in the local corner. The world is watching. So, and you benchmark that action with what the DSS did, even though we deny all these issues, by invading the National Assembly. The world, they laugh at us. There are better ways to carry out issues. So if, for instance, the EFCC waited patiently to carry out an investigation of an alleged mismanagement, which we may not claim is not there, then you come with a concrete evidence. You don't set the cart before the horse. But that is what we've been having lately.
And if you look at, sorry Mike, if you look at the way that EFCC has been carrying out its activities in recent times, you remember just before this one, the account of Benue State was also, frozen, and all of that. And then coming to Akwa Ibom State now, if you look at the way that the EFCC has been carrying on, what impression does it give you? Doesn't it leave room for conjectures?
The impression it gives me is a fact we are all denying. What is politics? Politics is the management of a societal affairs. And the focus should be to enhance the quality of life and make life meaningful. And you now have what we call the authority, which is a key element in good governance, the government. And under this democratic setting, we have the executive, we have the legislative arm, and the judiciary. And of course, the law enforcement agencies are under the executive arm. And from what we have been seeing, the perception is that the executive is intimidating. Not just the legislative arm, but the judiciary. You recall at a time when the homes of judges were invaded. At the end of the day, these cases were thrown out. So when you talk of reputation, it's about what you do, not what you claim to be doing, not the picture you are trying to pick. So if you pick the realities we have on ground, I think we are more or less creating a situation of an intimidative democracy, which is not the best for us. Nobody is precluding EFCC from investigating. When EFCC rolled out, it was a fantastic, a performance that we had. Recall that even under Chief Olusegun Obasanjo himself, some of his friends were victims. Even the Inspector General of Police was jailed. Yes, in this country. So, but right now, I'm tired of all these denials of realities, order from above the presidency. I would have expected, for instance, that when the First Lady, Aisha Buhari, came out to tell the world, not just Nigerians, that Aso Villa Clinic did not have a functional X-ray machine, even syringe. I expected EFCC to have gone to investigate that. I mean,
is it interesting to know that the First Lady has won several international awards from that guts she had to go out against the government?
So, you know, and part of the key elements of good governance and democracy is fairness. When the homes of judges were invaded, at the end of the day, these cases were thrown out. So when you talk of reputation, it's about what you do, not what you claim to be doing, not the picture you are trying to pick. So if you pick the realities we have on ground, I think we are more or less creating a situation of an intimidative democracy, which is not the best for us. Nobody is precluding EFCC from investigating. When EFCC rolled out, it was a fantastic, you know, a performance that we had. Recall that even under Chief Olusegun Obasanjo himself, some of his friends were victims. Even the Inspector General of Police was jailed. Yes, in this country. So, but right now, I'm tired of all these denials of realities, order from above, the presidency. I would have expected, for instance, that when the First Lady, Aisha Buhari, came out to tell the world, not just Nigerians, that Aso Villa Clinic did not have a functional X-ray machine, even syringe. I expected EFCC to have gone to investigate that. I mean,
is it interesting to know that the First Lady has won several international awards from that guts she had to go out against the government?
So, you know, and part of the key elements of good governance and democracy is fairness, equity. If it applies to you, it must apply to me. You see, so we shouldn't have that, and I have always advised the best way to have governance peace is to allow equity. I've asked myself, like somebody was joking, you know, we use religion, we use ethnicity, we use different excuses. You know, and we were discussing somewhere yesterday, if you isolate religion, a region of the world like the UAE is managed by Muslims. They've gone ahead.
Chinese are not even Christians.
I mean, I did a study on the UAE. Sheikh Zayed managed that region for about 38 years, and that he is the father of the modern UAE. You talk of Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Dubai, and if you know what this man did, he migrated that region from a poor desert to a paradise. And you can imagine the level of investment attracted to that region. I've been there. You get to the airport, you are swept up your feet. They have positioned themselves in. One of the things he did was to aggressively educate the people for sustainable development in that region. So particularly focusing on the women. You look at the airline, the official airline, they say from here to the world. You see, so in fact, I was so amazed, you know, that from Abu Dhabi, you do your border clearance into the United States of America. That is the level they have gone. So you get to JFK Airport in New York, you just roll your bag and enter the US. That is collaboration. You see, you want us to talk about China. Every arable land in China is used for food planting. You know, you see economies moving on. You want to, I was in Niagara Falls in Ontario, in Canada. Amazing experience. I understand Niagara Falls alone generates about 10,000 megawatts of hydroelectricity. You need to get the level of businesses going on there. Are you talking about, you know, the level of literacy in Canada and everything? And yet we are here over-resourced and busy politicking. Even if it's a positive politicking, I will be glad. And that's why some of us are saying, if you develop the environment, we all enjoy it. You are talking about security. Security. I was embarrassed to read that the USA Embassy shut down their businesses during this Salah. I mean, warning their citizens. The governor of Yobe placed a clampdown on vehicular movement. We've come to that level. We are expressing, you look at the ongoing crisis in the northeastern part of the country. The Emir of Kano had to come out to shout about the poverty. I did a study on absolute poverty and relative poverty. The two levels are resident in the northern part of the country. So what is the problem with us? And now, let's talk about what can be done. There are some crucial elements in national development. You talk of resources. Do we have the resources? I think as of today, Nigeria still has the second largest deposit of bitumen in the whole world. So what are we talking about? What is the state of our roads? Nigerians rank amongst the most brilliant in the world. You saw what our girls did recently in the US.
Yeah.
The US,
You know,
exactly.
So it's all about the environment. It's all about the environment. So let's streamline, recently with all the promises we made as a people, the farmers are even complaining that there is no support. I think in the last 2 weeks, our megawatts fell under 3,000
megawatts
for a nation. And we supply electricity to some countries. DISCO is busy fighting GENCO. So I think we need to fine-tune our processes. Let me tell you, we go around the world and I can tell you Nigeria is a beautiful bride when you talk of attracting investments. But how can we retain the investments? How can we key to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations that has spelled out clearly what will be the benchmark in 2030 to assess how countries are doing? How can we pick up? So these are issues bothering me.
You've mentioned, you've taken us around the world as to what is going on there, how beautiful things are there, and then coming back to Nigeria where it still seemed like we're running a very crude system. It seemed like we're still about 100 years behind the world if we make comparison directly with the Dubais and all the Chinas and Singapores and all the Canadas you talked about. Now, in those countries, like you said, that Nigerians have, or Nigeria has very intelligent people and all of that. If you go for Dubai, for instance, Dubai had a strong man who was visionary and had to inspire and galvanize and calibrate all the human and material resources towards that vision one man had. In Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew was the same thing. If you talk about China, even about the history, a little historical about China, Chairman Mao and the others had a vision for it. In Russia, it was the same, and so on. If you come back to Nigeria, the way we run now, where there are different ingredients that make us a little different or peculiar, because the religious and the ethnic ingredient and our history seem to be a little different from how it is in China or Dubai or Singapore and all of that. But from where we stand right now, how difficult would it be to really champion maybe 1 or 2 or 3 men come together, or women come up together to say, okay, we're galvanizing the entire country or the entire resources towards that kind of development?
Yeah, it's all about leadership. And I have been saying that. And if you put Nigeria as a case study on the table and look at the windows of management, you can compare what happens within those windows that you can shuffle. Nigerians are great people. I use the analogy of an aircraft. You are traveling, the air hostesses and hosts are attending to you, enjoying yourself, and the aircraft is about to run through a storm. What the pilot will do is just to announce. Whether you are air hostess, sit down, fasten your seatbelt, get ready for this, and they pull us through. There is a pilot. There is also a co-pilot. We have flight engineers on board. You see, so somebody must take the lead. Nigerians are wonderful people. I'll give you an example. I was embarrassed to my marrow. I still cannot soak it in, that my president, whom I respect so much, came to tell the world that he gave instruction to the Inspector General of Police and the man did not obey him.
And he said he didn't know.
And there was no consequence.
I mean, in fact, they even had a meeting thereafter. And this man is still in office. I hold nothing against individuals. I love Nigeria. I'm proud of this country. And I can tell you, many people have argued it will take a long time to fix Nigeria. I disagree with that. Let's come to Lagos State. At a time, if you don't have 7 parks, You don't just go through Oshodi. But a man came and said, this might have been on for a long time. I'm tired of this. And he sanitized it. How did he do it? Close to us here in Ikosi, the refuse dump. Governor Bode just said, no, we shouldn't have this within the community. And today, that place is being sanitized. You see the bus stops that are being expanded. Whoever saw them? So you need vision, you need direction. I have consistently asked a question. What is the vision for Project Nigeria? We have over 40 solid minerals. Here we are. We are even not an oil field. We are a gas field. In the last 2 weeks, the price of gas has gone up. You see? So it's, as we speak now, the debt profile of my dear country is 22 trillion naira. So you now begin, and let me tell you, I've asked myself, when I go to places like Dubai, and I ask myself, what is the big deal? And I ask this question really. What about if we surrender our oil resources, the refinery and everything, NNPC, to the Chinese? That, okay, help us. After all, they are the ones managing our real reconstruction and everything. Manage this for us. It is possible to have modular refineries in all local government areas and LCDAs in Nigeria.
Licenses,
there are several
have been given, and we've never seen anyone.
Where there is a will. So right now, we don't have the will to develop this country. And if you don't have the will, even if you have a vision, the vision goes nowhere. And you have mentioned it, you now need to inspire and mobilize the people to support. And as we speak in Nigeria now, we are divided, whether we agree or not.
All right, Jide, your submission about leadership is reminiscent of the words of Plato, who said that until kings become philosophers and philosophers become kings, society will continue to be in trouble. But well, I'm told we do not have time anymore.
We don't have time anymore. Wow. But we have to leave it here now.
Jide Ologun, lawyer, public affairs commentator. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming to talk to us. Unfortunately, we do not have enough time to dwell on this. Thanks very much indeed for your submissions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Nigeria would be great.
Yes.
Nigeria.
We believe so. Everyone knows so.